Start with Justin.
So how do you think the bye week treated you guys?
I think it was good. I think we had really good intentional work last week. I thought our effort was really high. Guys are into it. I thought it was good for to kind of hopefully get some of our guys that are beat up a little bit, just 3 games in. And so I thought we took advantage of that also. A lot of the guys stayed around here this weekend so they could get treatment and be in the training room. So it was good.
And what do you think were ultimately the biggest lessons that you guys learned after the loss?
There was a lot in that game. I think the biggest thing was that if you watched the BYU Kansas State game this weekend, to me the couple things showed up. The first thing was that BYU had the benefit of scoring 21 points on defense and special teams, right? So they ended up getting out in front, which kind of forced Kansas State's hand to throw the ball a little bit more, and so that kind of eliminated some of the legs of quarterback. But I think as we looked at it, we had some containment issues in that game against Kansas State. It's something we've been working really hard on. The special teams, the big punt return, was poorly executed, and that's been a huge point of emphasis for us. Let's see, what else are we talking about? We're just always driving like effort and red line, and like how much can we elevate that in the practice environment so that we make sure that we get what we need on Saturdays, in terms of how hard we play.
Jason and then David.
Did you feel after the K-State game and after the bye week that there's a change in approach or tone from the players or the coaches?
Not necessarily. I think whenever you win a game or lose a game, like it's always about the next one. And so we don't want to be a team that's always riding the roller coaster of emotion. We need to be able to do the work, dive into our process week in and week out that gives us a chance to play good football on the weekend.
David, then Brian.
Brent, 7 tight end catches so far this season. Now, how have you evaluated that, and maybe what's the plan to try to get your tight ends, particularly Kean, more involved in the offense?
Yeah, absolutely. We want Kean and Sam and all those guys to be more involved, and I think that's one of those deals where every game is a different game, and depending on how you're playing or who you're playing, sometimes those opportunities present themselves more than others. But in our previous life, we've always been a heavy tight end pass game football team, and so we definitely want to get those guys more involved.
Do you think there are opportunities there that Noah is not seeing right now?
I think there's opportunities there that maybe it's a combination of whether guys are covered or they have good coverage for it, or we're not winning against the person we're playing against, or Noah's going somewhere else in his progression because the guy's not open on time or it wasn't there. So I think there's a lot of, we've been obviously diving hard into our pass game and our scheme in the last 10 days. And, I'm excited to see what it looks like as we keep going throughout the week.
Right.
Did you use this bye week in any way to maybe reevaluate the starting positions or rotations where you might see some different people in different spots?
I don't know you're always evaluating that, right? Like game in and game out. So, I wouldn't say that's like particular to the bye weekend. Every week you're looking at that, like, are we getting enough out of this guy at this spot or this guy out of this spot? So there's always a balance to that. But, I think there are some guys that can help us in a more significant way, whether that's an offense or defense or the kicking game. And so there's going to be more people playing.
Justin?
When you watch BYU or Utah, what are some things that they excel at?
BYU is just obviously an extremely well-coached team. They've been winning lots of games every year for a very, very long time. They're 20 years into their program build, right? Like they know exactly what they're recruiting to, exactly what works there. They're always one of the most physical football teams you play every year. The high level of execution, always really, really impressive football team. Every time I've ever played them or coached against them, I've always had an incredible amount of respect for Coach Whittingham and that staff for doing an awesome job.
So what do you make of their quarterback situation?
It is what it is. I'm assuming the other guy's going to be back for us, but if he's not, it looked like, Wilson played pretty good. So they just went on the road and beat a top 20 team. So even without Cam, they're obviously playing good football.
Right.
Is there any advantage to having had this time off compared to facing a team that just had to play a tough road game, maybe in the sun and all that, or is just not enough? It doesn't really matter that they just played.
I think that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if there's sometimes you get a big boost because you go and get that big time win on the road also. So sometimes there's benefit to that. Sometimes there's benefit to the downtime. It just depends. Team to team is different. And I don't think when it's happening in real time. I think you look back and say, oh, that was good for us. I don't know that like when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, we need this right now.
How were your results, if you can recall, post bye weeks when you were at your previous job?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I have no idea.
David?
I think it's always easier to have a home game after bye than it is a road game. But
David?
Brent, obviously last week you mentioned you were wanting to focus the defense more on their eyes and what they're seeing out there. How do you feel like that's progressed through the first week of the bye?
I think it's been great. I have a ton of faith in Coach Aquina and that staff, in terms of just, playing in the secondary and eye discipline. There's few that have done it as well as Coach Aquina has over the years. And so I'm confident that we're going to play better there.
And in terms of your role on game day, how involved are you in terms of the play calling? Are you constantly in Dino's ear suggesting what you want or what you think might work here? How does that dynamic?
I'm a little bit more big picture that way. Just kind of talking through what they're seeing, listening to what they're talking about. If I have a suggestion, I'll say it. But I normally let those guys do their job.
Jason?
You mentioned a couple times using the bye week to kind of dive into the offensive scheme and take a look. Without giving too much away, what does that entail in terms of like how much can you change during the season?
I think you do that. You always do that during a bye week, right? You've played 3 games. You have a bunch of calls on tape. And so you're trying to break down, kind of what tendencies you have, what you're doing on, either what's working or what's not working, and so that part of it is always an ongoing, conversation with every staff I've ever been on when you get to a bye week. This one was a little bit early, but we still had 3 games. And so, Utah has 3 games of tape on us. And so trying to figure out, like, what are they saying when they watch it? And hopefully we can break some of those tendencies.
What are you expecting in terms of crowd noise and atmosphere in Salt Lake City, and how was it dealing with the crowd noise with the helmet communication?
The helmet communication was great at Kansas State. I think that's been a good thing. That's one of those things when I looked at the schedule this year, I thought this is a tough stretch, right? You play 3 of the toughest road games in our conference in 5 weeks, right? Like if Kansas State was a real atmosphere, 10 days or a week ago or whatever that was. And then you watch BYU on Saturday night. Like those fans have an impact on the outcome of the game. They impact momentum. They impact the energy that everyone's feeling in the field. And that's why I keep urging our fan base here that we have to match these other great home field advantages that other people have. You know what I mean? And we need them to come out and support and be a pain for that opponent, when they're going through it. Just like we're expecting Utah to be. I mean, I think I've been coaching in the West a long time. I think outside of Oregon, Utah is the hardest place to play in the West. And I would say Oregon, Utah, Washington, BYU, Oregon State, something like that. Those are the ones that are always the most challenging in terms of just crowd involvement and engagement and the level of noise you have to deal with.
And what do you think has been the biggest improvement in Chase Kennedy's game?
I think he's just getting more comfortable in the scheme. Some of that stuff is hard to, he's healthy, and I think some of that stuff is hard when you're practicing it to really see for the player to feel what it's actually going to feel like in game, But now we've played a couple games, you can see him, starting to play with more confidence and play faster.
All right, that's our time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.